Just to give you a little bit of a background before we get into the new, it's not, excuse me, into the law, let's take a look at what the current situation is. So before this new law, there weren't any laws about, what the insurance companies were going to cover in terms of, yes, I'm going to cover this dog, I'm not going to cover that turtle, whatever it is. All the insurance companies made determinations themselves what they were going to cover, what they were going to exclude, and a lot of it overlapped, but you had to pay close attention to your policy because State Farm might, cover something, but Allstate didn't cover it. But the insurance companies were completely in charge of what they were going to cover and what they were not going to cover. Before the new law, all of the landlord insurance policies that we had would cover the legal and medical expenses that were caused by animals. So if somebody would bite somebody, if a dog would bite somebody, hopefully the tenant had a renter's policy. If not, that's when your landlord kicked in and it turned into a big mess. With the insurance policies that were in effect, they almost all of them would exclude certain types of dog breeds that were labeled as dangerous, and they were called restricted breeds. So here is the list of what the insurance companies would traditionally not cover these restricted breeds. Because these restricted breeds were not covered by insurance policies, a lot of us landlords would just simply not allow these restricted breeds at our rental properties, because they were considered dangerous. So in a typical scenario, let's say an applicant, calls you or contacts you and say, hey, do you accept pit bulls? A lot of us would say, nope, sorry, not going to accept them. Insurance doesn't cover it. This is exactly what this new law is changing here now. So now we're switching over to what does the new law say. So what the new law did was it forced insurance companies to cover all the dog breeds, whether they wanted to or not. So that's why it's a good thing. We don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. It's automatically covered by the insurance policies. And I thought this was really interesting, their rationale why they decided to do it. Is because they wanted to make sure that homeowners and tenants were able to find housing. A lot of us would, landlords would say, nope, you got pit bull, no, I'm not going to rent to you, and then it makes it very difficult for these tenants who have these certain types of pets to find housing. And then this one is particularly close to my heart because I love animals, is that they wanted to try to find homes for some of these, animals so that fewer pets ended up in shelters. So that was the reason why the state of Illinois is forcing insurance companies to cover these restricted breeds. Now, technically, not technically, in actuality, in reality, this law actually portions of it went into effect last year, and then the other portion of it went into effect just, the 2023. And we did have a big, long landlord workshop when it went into effect here with all of the details. So if you're interested in listening to that, but I'll go over the next slide or two, what it talks about. So it covers all rentals in Illinois. And this applies to these types of insurance policies. It's not just, landlords, because remember, all these rules, a lot of these laws apply to more than just landlords. So it applies to homeowner policies and renters policies. Now, interestingly, when I read this, I'm like, wait a minute. The law specifically says homeowner and renters policies. I'm like, doesn't say landlord policies. I'm wondering about that. So I checked with my insurance broker and I said, hey, can you see if some of these insurance companies are covering our landlord policies? And the few companies that he looked into did include landlord policies. Okay? So what does that mean for you, for your insurance companies? What the insurance companies, it means for them is that it doesn't matter what dog breed there are or mixtures of breeds. They can't say, nope, not going to cover it. They can't place limits on it. They can't restrict it. Or if you have, let's say, a landlord policy and all of a sudden your tenant gets a pit bull, they can't then reduce the coverage. So these insurance companies also can't refuse to issue a new policy. If your policy is coming up for renewal and you say, oh, my tenant got a pit bull, they can't refuse to renew it. They can't, cancel it there. Or they can't say, okay, your tenant's got a pit bull, now it's going to cost you $1,000 more a year. So this is fabulous for us. I mean, this is full, blanket coverage for all of the dog breeds for our rentals. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to cover every single dog. There is like a restriction on there because if the insurance company determines that that individual dog is dangerous or vicious, then that's when they can refuse to issue it, renew it, existing, whatever. So this is nice because think about it for all those protected classes, that we have. Like, for example, I'll give you the analogy of a criminal record. Remember that criminal record, if an applicant, approaches you and they say, hey, we have a criminal record. Remember, there was the Just Housing Amendment that kicked in 2, 3 years ago that says you can't automatically say no to somebody who has a criminal record. What you have to do is take a look at that individual and then do an individualized assessment. Well, they had an armed robbery. They just got convicted 2 months ago and they pose a danger. Well, then yes, you can say no to that criminal record, to that person who has a criminal record. You just can't flat out say no to anybody who has a criminal record. Same thing for these dogs. You can't say no to, pit bulls, but you can say no to, what's his name? I don't know, making him killer the dangerous, pit bull because he has a history of bites or something like that. Okay. So how is the insurance company going to make a determination whether this individual dog is dangerous or not? They're not going to set up hidden cameras in your house or monitor, what your dog is like or anything like that. So they have clear guidelines how they're going to determine whether your dog is dangerous. One is pretty easy. You guys, I think, know that when the insurance companies will decide whether they're going to insure you or not, they'll run a history of claims, what claims you guys have made, we have made in the past. And if they have ever had to pay out on any of these dog bites or other incidents, it's going to show up on there. So that establishes a history that this dog is dangerous or vicious or whatever. And that's when they can potentially deny you. And then the other thing they're going to do is use it on what's called the Animal Control Act, which has a very clear definition of what a dangerous dog is. Any individual dog that behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses a serious and unjustified imminent threat of serious physical injury or death to a person or a companion mammal, or a dog that without justification bites a person does not cause serious physical and does not cause serious physical injury. So that's it. Just to wrap it up, what this Dog Breed Insurance Act basically says, it's like a doggy anti-discrimination law. So it's telling us don't discriminate against all these dangerous breeds, but we can say, no, I'm not going to accept your dog because based on, a previous claim or, I did my research and your previous landlord said it bit somebody, then I can say no. So, let somebody calls you up and says, hey, I got a pit bull. You can say, yep, we accept pit bulls, but we're not going to accept your doggy named Fido because I found out he bit the mailman last year or whatever. And then don't forget that this Dog Breed Insurance Act is aimed at the insurance companies. It's not us. It's not telling us what we can do, but it does affect us. So this is the bottom line. What this means for us. What do you have to do that's different, or what do you have to be aware of? We cannot use insurance coverage as an excuse to deny applicants if they tell us they have one of these restricted breeds. So again, an applicant calls you up and says, I've got a pit bull. You can no longer say, nope, I'm not going to accept you because my insurance doesn't cover restricted breeds. What that doesn't mean, however, is that we still do not have to accept pets. That doesn't, if you don't want pit bulls, you don't want pets whatsoever, no problem. You can still say no pets. And that also doesn't mean that we have to accept restricted breeds. So you can still say, no, I don't want pit bulls. You just can't say, I don't want a pit bull because my insurance doesn't cover it. It's a little bit of a subtle difference there, but you don't want to get in trouble by saying the wrong thing. What that still means is that we can still go ahead and screen animals. We can tell them what type of animals we want. We can tell them, you must do this, you must not do that with your animals. We just can't tell them no insurance. I do see we got 2 chat questions. Let me just wrap this up here. Okay, yeah. And then here, just really quickly, the tips for us now that this new law kicked into effect is take a look at your screening materials. Remember, we should all have a tenant selection criteria or the rental criteria, whatever it is that you call it there. Just make sure to review it that you don't have on there, no, I don't accept dangerous breeds because my insurance doesn't cover it. And then make sure that you do have a written pet policy there in your screening criteria that addresses all of this. That way the applicants won't say, hey, you're discriminating against me because I have a pit bull. So include this in your screening criteria. And I pulled out here's just an example, the one that I use in my screening criteria. So I say, for example, I don't want more than 2 animals. And right here, we reserve the right to restrict the breed and size of dogs and dangerous animals. Nowhere on here do I say I'm going to restrict the breed of, not have restricted breeds because my insurance doesn't cover it. I don't say anything about insurance. I include, what I'm going to charge. I still want people to have animal liability insurance for these restricted breeds. I don't know, even though the insurance company covers it, I still want additional requirements. And then I'm telling everybody, I'm going to screen your pets, just giving them a heads up to try to avoid some of these issues here. I think that's the last one. And then just a little tip here. We've had this discussion in the past, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I highly recommend everybody uses this petscreening.com. That company is going to be the one that screens your pets, answers your questions, deals with the tenants, so you don't have to fight with your tenants about, whether these dogs are dangerous or not, etc.